Well, beats taking the subway. Don't mind us, she just needs to use the elevator.
Wait! Who are you?
You know who I am.
I do?
I'm Batman.
The early 2000s were a weird time, probably because everybody was still kind of in shock that the world hadn't ended during Y2K. The jeans didn't have back pockets, the belts got bedazzled, and everyone decided that publicly announcing which friend was your favorite was a good idea. But for all the strangeness of this era, the first few years of this century were when humanity finally began figuring out how to do superhero movies the right way. No more of this, or this, and especially not this. When Spider-Man burst onto the scene in 2002, we were all blown away. This was the movie we'd been hoping for, or at least close enough. And then Christopher Nolan came along in 2005, reminding us how cool Batman could be without those rubber bat nipples.
Along with those successful movies came their video game tie-ins. Both Spider-Man and Batman's video games were successful, but one of them was better than the other one. So are you ready to find out which one wins today? Everyone's friendly neighborhood Spider-Man is no stranger to video games. The web-slinger's been in so many of them that it's hard to keep track of them all. But his first ever movie video game was nothing short of spectacular. With better looking graphics, music, and much of the movie cast reprising their roles for the game, this game promised us
Non-stop web-slinging, wall-crawling action!
Batman might be lacking in the nipple department in this game, but you get to use all the other iconic gadgets, like the grapple gun, batarangs, and even the Batmobile. One of the more unique aspects in this installment is how Batman plays on the fears of his victims, creating an awesome theatrical feel as you play through the game. All the major actors from the movie also do the voices for their video game characters, and they look just like they did in the movie. It had been years since a great Batman game had been made, until Batman Begins finally did
What needs to be done?
Round one!
Spider-Man's graphics are quite the impressive feat, especially for a 2002 game. Massive cityscapes with buildings to swing to and fro on. You might not have been able to explore all of New York City, but it certainly felt like it. Previous Spider-Man titles and games like it used fogs or shadows to mask parts of the city, but this time, you could see everything.
Spider-Man had better graphics than any of the older superhero games, but Batman came out 3 years later, so the improvement in graphics is even more noticeable. Some of the cutscenes in Spider-Man, even the ones they obviously spent a lot of time on, were still pretty laughable in terms of realism. But Batman's characters looked really close to the movie characters. The city had that right shadowy Gotham look, but the enemies were still easily spotted and everything was well polished. While the lower graphics in a few of the Spider-Man levels made enemies really difficult to find, and even seeing where you were supposed to go was tricky, the shadowy alleys of Gotham City are surprisingly easily traversed. If it was easier to see the bad guys in Spider-Man's world, maybe Uncle Ben would still be alive.
Round two!
The Batman game makes sure to incorporate all the main characters from the movie, including Scarecrow, Ra's al Ghul, and even Discount Asian Ra's al Ghul. Minor characters in the movie are given bigger roles in the game to spice things up even more, like Zsasz, the psychotic Arkham Asylum inmate. And of course there's always Alfred, still voiced by Michael Caine, and Lucius Fox, still voiced by Morgan Freeman. With all these top-notch actors returning to reprise their roles in the game, the character list in Batman Begins is a good one.
The fact you have great actors reprising their roles doesn't automatically make them better characters. Most of Spider-Man's leading cast returns to the game as well, and they even include some extra villains like Vulture, Kraven, and Shocker. In Batman, you just kinda sneak around the villain's base of operations, beat up a couple of their goons, watch a cutscene or two of the villain, and then you shut him down faster than Bruce's parents. Whereas in Spider-Man, your encounters with the villains usually go several levels long, with the two of you taunting each other, making the pursuit all the more enjoyable. The characters are more showy, more expressive, and more involved personally than Batman's.
Round 3.
Spider-Man's definitely gonna win in levels. There's like 1,000 times more of them, and there's such a variety to them that they keep throwing different types at you when you need a break. You have indoor levels, outside levels, underground levels, chase levels, hostage rescue levels, sexy fun time levels, and even levels where you pose for cameras. The amount and variety that Spider-Man has is just too much for Batman's bank account to battle.
Your alliteration is impressive, but not enough to win you the point here. Batman Begins also has plenty of variety within levels. The training missions with the League of Shadows, stealth missions, beat-em-up levels, and most importantly, you get to drive the Batmobile. Spider-Man may have more levels than Batman, but some of them are super short. You get done with each one faster than Mary Jane goes through boyfriends.
Yeah, that's true, some of them are short, but they're still memorable. It's much better to think of them more as chapters to levels since they tend to go back to back. For example, your battle with Shocker goes for several levels, each of them giving you a different kind of experience. A lot of Batman's levels are a little samey looking, where Spider-Man's levels have a lot more to see. The graphics may not be as good, but Spider-Man has a lot more to animate, giving a wider variety to the level's aesthetics, as well as their functionality.
Shazam!
Round 4.
The story in Batman Begins is where the game really goes above and beyond. They do a good job of sticking closely with the movie storyline so you don't miss any of the good parts, but they fleshed out parts that were skimmed over in the movie to make for more exciting gameplay that actually adds to the story. In Spider-Man, the Shocker, Vulture, and Kraven parts are completely pointless to the story of the game. They're just in there for filler and we all know it. But every character in Batman Begins actually has something to do with the overall story of the game. Also, this game does a really cool thing where half of it's told in flashbacks when Bruce was training at the League of Shadows, and when he was discovering Falcone's drug trade. It's a really neat twist on the story, rather than just faithfully and linearly trudging through.
Well, Spider-Man may not do anything fancy like that, but it's still a good story. And yeah, the villains may just be a little bit of filler as far as the story's concerned, but it helps prolong the story. Instead of nerd, great power, goblin, boom, you finish. Nothing fancy, but hey, I think it's a good story.
Now you think, because you got good characters and good levels, that you know something about what makes a good story, but you don't. You've never tasted serious. You're Spider-Man, friendly neighborhood. You'd have to go 1,000 miles from here to meet somebody who didn't know your name, so don't come down here with your mediocre voice acting, trying to prove something to yourself. People from Sony never understand. And you always lose in a category you don't understand.
Round 5.
When you play Spider-Man, you never forget this song. And not just because it's the opening music, but because it's good. It means action. It means adventure. It means Spider-Man! But not just this song, there's other great combat songs, quiet sneaking music, and all different kinds of music that you could want. They're catchy, they're well placed, and really, you can't really ask for more.
Yeah you can. You can ask for more good ones. Other than just the opening theme song to the game and like one other, there aren't very many good music tracks in Spider-Man. I'm not saying they're bad, they're just kinda lame.
Dibs on the spider.
Almost just filler music because they didn't know what else to put. Each music track in Batman plays on the theme of fear, which the game is based around. It's not exactly catchy music, but it's not supposed to be. Instead of the music just being there to fill the silence, it makes the creepy places you visit, like Arkham Asylum, seem even spookier. When you fight, the music actually plays louder when you land a hit, making the fighting that much more epic. And when it needs to, the game can really bring out the cinematic orchestra.
Alfred, we've got arson.
Round 6.
One of the marks of a good game is how often you want to replay it. Batman Begins rewards anyone who beats it by unlocking new costumes, including a retro Batman suit and Batmobile. The game is more than enjoyable enough to play it again without any unlockables, but the extra Batsuits at the end make it even more fun.
Oh, those are cute costumes. Did your husband make them for you? Really though, there's no costume contest here. Spider-Man has loads of cheat codes and costumes to match and surpass Batman's. And there's one more thing that blows Batman out of the water like a can of shark repellent. When you beat the game, you can play through the whole game again as Harry Osborn in the Green Goblin gear. Not a costume, but an actual character with his own unique moves like pumpkin bombs and flying around on the glider. Characters even react and say things differently to you, so it's almost like you're playing a whole other game. Even though you still play the same levels, the story's technically different, and Batman just doesn't have anything to compare with that kind of replayability.
Round 7.
You play as Spider-Man, so naturally he brings a ton to the table with gameplay. He has a ton of hand-to-hand combo moves, and I haven't even started talking about his web moves. His web swinging is also unique for this game. You don't have to swing from building to building anymore like you used to. It almost has a flying aspect to it, so when you do aerial battles, you just have to focus on the fight and not where you're swinging. Spider-Man is also super fast. He can jump, punch, kick, and shoot web at a moment's notice.
The problem here is, Spider-Man's aerial battles suck. They really do. It's hard to gauge how far you are from your flying target, and there's always one more little robot shooting you from somewhere else. Also, web swinging isn't supposed to be like that. I mean, come on, Spider-Man is supposed to be swinging from building to building, something they did very well in the Spider-Man 2 game. What's he swinging on here, millions of helicopters? Also, Spider-Man is so fast, he doesn't have precise controls. That's fine when you're fighting on a big open rooftop, but it's a nightmare when you're indoors. He's always climbing on the wrong thing and the camera struggles to keep up. On the other hand, Batman is really easy to control, and it's also easy to survey your surroundings while you fight, so you don't get blindsided by a thug. Oh, and that's another thing. A really unique element to the game is the added fear factor. If you scare the thugs in an area, they become easier to fight. It's a unique route the game left as optional, but it really adds to the fun of the game. Batman is just easier to control, which makes the fights and the gameplay much more fun.
Nah, Spider-Man isn't that hard to get the hang of once you start playing for a while. I swear, it's just...
Batman may take the victory for this one, but it was extremely close. Bruce and I debated a long time before we finally decided that Batman was a slightly better game. They're both a lot of fun, but in the end, Spider-Man's somewhat awkward controls were enough to put him behind Batman's much smoother gameplay. Spider-Man is better than Batman in other areas, but it wasn't quite enough to give him the win today.
In the end, both games do a very good job at making you feel like the superheroes from those respected series. But there lies the edge for Batman that was just enough to push it over Spider-Man, and that Spider-Man relies more on spectacle than smoothing out some of the edges in the game that were overlooked. But underneath its flaws, Spider-Man is a game with a heart of gold.
However, if we've learned anything from Video Game Versus, we know it's not what a game is underneath, but what it does that defines it.
These are the minutes when a man chooses which channel he's going to subscribe to for the rest of his life. Just be careful who you subscribe to.
What, do you think I'm gonna subscribe to BuzzFeed or something?
No, that's not what I'm saying, and I know we're not Death Battle, but
Then stop pretending to be!
Right, I'll like your video.